And I call the honourable member for Burt.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. I remember the first time that I met Bob Hawke. I was but a lad riding on my dad's shoulders. It was at Fry Park in Kelmscott and there was a huge crowd. That's really all that I can remember. But then again, I was only about 3 or 4 at the time. I'm told by our local state MP from that time that the occasion was the opening of the new Kelmscott Soccer Club facilities, just up from where my office is now. He said it was like the coming of the Messiah. Thousands of people all jostling just to be able to touch Bob on the head as he walked through the crowd. And in a way, that is how I have and will forever remember Bob Hawke, the man adored by the people. Such occasions were common. A former federal MP for my community described it as like watching Pope Bob. Another predecessor of mine noted the delight Bob had at posing for a photo at the gravestone of an Australian soldier killed in action during the war in France with the same name as that MP. A pseudo-Western Australian, Bob Hawke attended school in WA and studied law at the University of Western Australia with my grandfather in the late 1940s. They were both born in South Australia too. Prime Minister Hawke led the federal Labor government I grew up under, and he epitomised the Labor values that I learnt, in a way encapsulated that government. In a sense, it was the third way before it was a thing. As our 23rd Prime Minister, he reformed our country in many ways, with one of the most brave and ambitious policy agendas in our history, indeed modernising our country. He changed our country and transformed our economy. He turned Australia into a world leader in so many areas. Critically, though, it was full of hope and bold of ideas. However, as much as the government benches now try to claim credit and align themselves with these policies from that time, there has always been a critical difference, and it is in the way that Labor, under Hawke, always ensured a proper social safety net. For growth is stronger when it is shared, and when wages and living standards rise, everyone in the community should benefit. Bob was also a strong advocate for women's rights, striving to achieve equal payment for men and women, and in protecting women from sexual harassment in the workplace. The current Workplace Gender Equality Act 2012 has its legacy from the Affirmative Action Equal Employment Opportunity for Women Act of 1986. By 1990, the Hawke Labor government committed more than $1 million to establish the Commonwealth State National Committee on Violence Against Women. When Bob came to office, less than 3 in 10 kids finished school. By the time he left, that number was 8 in 10. Bob helped us realise a person's education or future prospects should not be determined by their postcode, and this is a message that continues to resonate with me today. Prime Minister Hawke also infamously said that by 1990, no Australian child would live in poverty. I remember studying cartoons about this in my social studies classes in high school in the mid-1990s. I recall at the time thinking that was a bold goal that clearly wasn't achieved, but that in no way was it not something that should be strived for. He inspired me to work to help change the story for the kids in my community, one of Western Australia's lowest socio-economic areas. Bob's beginnings were in union organising and bargaining for all, making sure that every Australian worker receives a fair day's pay for a fair day's work in a way that is responsible for economic growth through the wages and incomes accords. Perhaps most quintessentially, each and every Australian carries with them a monument to Bob Hawke and his government each and every day. A green and gold reminder in the form of a Medicare card, assuring us that we do indeed live in the lucky country and that the health of one of us matters to all of us. Turning to my new shadow portfolio of WA resources, there's a good chance that our resources industry wouldn't be what it is today without Bob Hawke's input. He was a pivotal figure in opening up the Pilbara iron ore industry to foreign investment. In the late 1980s, he was one of the main drivers behind ensuring delivery of the landmark Channar Joint Venture Agreement, a 20-year joint venture that has resulted in the export of more than 250 million tonnes of iron ore to China by Rio Tinto. Today, China accounts for more than 83% of WA's iron ore exports. Bob is also credited with facilitating the petroleum resource rent tax alongside WA Senator Peter Walsh and, of course, Treasurer Paul Keating. This was a vital initiative on tax reform for minerals that effectively saved Western Australia from the possibility of going broke at the beginning of the term of the Hawke government. Now, no event that Bob took part in lately was complete without a bellowing rendition of Solidarity Forever. I'll spare the chamber my version. On one of his most recent trips to WA, when he came to help in the election of the McGowan State Labor government, it was no different. On that visit, I had the opportunity of introducing my son Nicholas to Bob, and later Bob sang Solidarity Forever with us all. Soon enough, Nicholas will be old enough to appreciate what a special moment that was for him and for me. I extend my condolences to Blanche, Bob's children and his grandchildren. Vale Hawke, rest in peace.
I thank the honourable member for Burt. I call the honourable member for Calare.